Chapter 11 of History of Japan in Words of One Syllable. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Arnav Darnal. History of Japan in Words of One Syllable by Helen Ainslie Smith. Chapter 11. A brief reign for the Mikado. In the long list of Mikados who sat on the throne while the Hojo clan held the reins of state, there was more than one who felt his soul chafe at the bonds laid on him by those who were his slaves by rights. And not a few of them laid plots and made moves, and tried in all the ways they could to thwart their shikin. But it was not till they were off the throne, with heads shaved and priests' robes, that they felt that they could use the strength even of plain men in their realm, which in name held not a man, a child, or anything that had not been theirs while they were on the throne. At last, Gotoba, who had been a Mikado till near the year 1200, but was now a priest and a man of much might in the realm, made a bold trial to break down the Hojo's strength. But they beat him in the field, and then laid the same hold on the throne as on the shoguns. With this, they grew still more strong, and so full of pride that their ways were more than the rest of the folks could stand. This led to their fall. There were now no more such great men as had made this race shine in the eyes of all the Japanese in the times past. In these days, they had more love of wealth, and thought more of case and their own joys than of the toil and care they should give to their work, so as to do their best for the realm. To get means to have all the things they were so fond of, they bore down on the folks for more tax, and at last their proud ways and their threefold yoke on the Mikado, the shogun, and mass of the folks came to be more than the realm could bear. In the year 1327, or close to that time, the Emperor Godaigo made up his mind, with the aid of his son, Moriyoshi, to risk life and all else that was dear to him, to break down the twofold form of rule and to get the reins of state once more in the hands of the throne. He knew that the mass of Japanese folks had so much love and awe for the Mikado that he would win if he could get but all the troops it would need to cope with the Hojo. He got the aid of the Buddhist priests, and in a few years made a fort of Kasagi in Yamato, while at the same time a brave man, whose name was Kusunoki, rose in Kawachi, who made it the aim of his life to bring back the Mikado's rule. The scheme of the emperor came to a sad end for him at first. The Hojo burnt his fort, got hold of him, and sent him to live at Oki, far off from court and throne. But though they might keep the Mikado where he could not lead any troops on them, they could not clear the realm of its hate for their rule, nor put out the torch, which, now that Godaigo had lit it, would burn with a fierce flame till its fire had put an end to the Hojo for all time. Twice they laid siege to the stronghold of Kusunoki, but they did not catch him, for he gave them the slip one day, and lived to make a grand fight for his lord and a great name for himself. For some time, the Mikado and his friends felt that their fate was most dark, but Godaigo kept a stout heart, though far off from his home and in the hands of the Hojo guards. And at last there came forth a brave young man to cut the net of the proud chicken and loose the grasp of the shogun rule. This young man was Nitta Yoshisada. He could trace his line back to the grand old house of Gen. At the time of Godaigo's war, he held a good post in the ranks of the Hojo, who sent him to fight Kusunoki. But he would not draw sword on the troops of his king, and left the Hojo when they bade him do so. The son of the Mikado, who ruled in the name of his sire while Go-Daigo was kept from his throne, at once gave him a place in the Mikado's troops. And then he drew all his own men to him, for in those days each great man had his own band or clan, as in what are known as the feudal times of England. So, ere long, Nitta was at the head of a good force, and with them led a war on the Hojo. It was a hard, fierce strife, but the end of it came when Nitta set the proud town of Kamakura on fire and burnt it to the ground, and so threw down the sway of the great house that had so long held the reins of the realm. At the same time, Kyoto had been made free by Kusunoki and Ashikaga, a man whose name came to be great in a few years, and the might of the Mikado was once more set up in the west. This was not far from the year 1333. Word was sent at once to Go-Daigo to call him back to his throne, and now he was not to hold it as a mere tool of someone else, as he had done in time past, but to be, in fact, as in name, the sole head and chief of this land. His first task was to do something for the brave men who had done so much for him. They had won the realm for him, and now it was but fair that he should give them posts and lands such as they would care most to have. The shoguns had long made it a rule with the Japanese that those who fought best for the realm should have the charge of their best fiefs, and with them large clans of men at arms. This, then, was to be what Go-Daigo would do by those who had gone forth to risk all they had for their king. But he was far from wise or just in the way he did this. While he should have made his first gifts to Kusunoki and to Nitta, he gave 3 best fiefs to Ashikaga Takauji, who had fought well, it is true, but not best. He had a great deal of craft and knew how to serve his own ends and to get in the good grace of the Mikado, so as to raise himself to a place of much might. He was not like Kusunoki and Nitta, whose most dear wish had been to break down the might of the shogun and put the full sway in the hands of the Mikado. But, like most of the folks who had fought in their lead, he wished to get rid of the Hojo. And when the hard fight of the most brave men in the realm had torn down their throne, he at once set to work in a still way to put himself and his house in their place. There was a girl of the Mikado's house whom he got to aid him by bribes, to make Go-Daigo give ear to his talks and his plans, while, with the folks, he made the most for his own ends out of some small ill will that was felt by those who held low posts in the ranks and had fought well to put down the Hojo, but felt ill-used now at the scanty way in which the Mikado had paid out his spoils. These men were more fond of war than of peace. They did not care if there were 2 of peace. They did not care if there were 2 heads to the realm or 1, so long as the shoguns were not in the hands of the proud race of old Tokimasa. Thus, Ashikaga soon found that he could shape things to suit himself, and that in a short time he could start up more war and strike for his own high prize. It was a blow to him when Go-Daigo made his own son shogun, which was still a post of great pride in the realm. But he did not show his wrath, and laid plans to get his own way in the end. The Mikado had been a man of grand force and will when he first held the throne, but he had lost his best gifts while he was in the bonds of the Hojo, far off from his throne and all that was dear to him. No one had known him to be so weak and vain in the old days, but now the words of Ashikaga and the young girl whom he paid bribes to talk for him had so sweet a sound in his ear that he did not stop to think if they were true or false. He let them get a strong hold on him, and would not heed the wise men round him who bade him take care and think of the rest, who had done as much or more than Ashikaga to serve him. His thoughts all went to this one man. He did not treat Nitta as he should have done, and he did not place Kusunoki in such a post as he had the gifts to fill. No doubt this man could have done more for the good of Japan just then than anyone in the realm, to say naught of what was due him for the great work he had done in the field of war. The prince had not been shogun for long when Ashikaga made the Mikado think that his son had laid plots to get the throne. And when the prince, stung to the quick by his hate for the space foe, and wroth at the lie he had told for his sire, gave the word for his troops to march to Ashikaga and pay him up for his tales. Ashikaga made it out that the prince's plan was to snare him first of all, so that he could be more sure of his way to the throne. In this way, he got the Mikado in so great a rage with his son that he gave word to have him dealt with, as if he had in truth turned foe to his sire. But the doom of bonds and death had scarce been laid on his good son when the Mikado saw he had been made a dupe of, and though it was too late to bring back his boy, he at once grew cold to his real foe. Ashikaga saw the change, fled from Kyoto with great bands of the men-at-arms who did not like the ways of things at court, and took the place that the Hojo had held at Kamakura, which he had built up since the fire. Then the Mikado went back to his friends. Nito was freed from a charge that had been laid on him that he was forced to the throne, and was put at the head of the Mikado's troops to whip the bold Ashikaga. But the odds were not on the Mikado's side this time. He had lost the love of the ranks, once glad to die for him, and so his force was small, while that of his foe was large. His side lost in the fight that came on, and he had to flee for his life with a small band of his men who still held true. Ashikaga was lord of the field, but he had fought the throne, had drawn arms on the Son of Heaven, and so, to the Japanese, he was worse than any of the Hojo. Then he tried to make his wrong deeds seem right, and give to the realm a new Mikado. He sought out Kogen, a child of one of the emperors who had been on the throne ere the tie of Godaigo. Some of the folks thought he had no right there, now since the real Mikado's son Moriyoshi was in all ways fit for his sire's place. But Kogen took the seat, and this new Son of Heaven soon made Ashikaga great shogun, with all the old state of that post at Kamakura. So the twofold form of rule was set up once more, in less than 3 years from the time it was thrown down. But the change, and still more the fact that Kogen had been put on the throne, brought a war in which Ashikaga and the north fought the south and the real Mikado. It was kept up for near 70 years, and is known as the War of the Chrysanthemums. This is a long tale of false deeds and true blue, of fire and fight, of want on the part of the poor folks, and waste on the part of the rich. And though at first it was a sharp strife to put down the claims of one Mikado and fix his foe firm and sure on the throne, the true aim was lost at last, and the whole realm was a scene of strife, and the war was but the brawls of small chiefs for the sake of land, or for no good cause at all. Ere it came to an end, all the great chiefs who had led in it were dead. The Mikados themselves came to feel that it was of small note to them how it came out, for most of the men-at-arms seemed to have lost sight of the fact that they had come out to give the throne to their true Mikado. At last, in 1392, Ashikaga sent a band of his men to the Emperor of the South, who held old Godaigo's place, to ask him to give the sword, the glass, and the ball, which he had borne with him when he fled from Ashikaga's men, to his Mikado, who held his court in the north. He, they said, should be emperor, and the Mikado of the South should be ex-emperor. And from then on, the throne should be held by a son of first one house, and then the other. The things were sent, and the change made with great pomp. But the Japanese say to this day that the line of the South was that of the true sons of heaven, while the line on the North was false, and that, ere long, died out. All Japanese books that are thought to be worth anything by the folks speak of the Mikados of Kogen's line as the false emperors, or northern emperors, which means the same thing. End of chapter 11.